Now, across Texas, the issue is.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas. And this is Texas, the issue is.
The regular session began with an understanding that some type of response to the school shooting in Uvalde had to be done. Now, a year after that attack, the session is coming to a close with memorials to the victims. But the heartache remains, along with questions about if what was done during the session is the proper response to Uvalde and the recent attack in Allen. I spoke to former House Democratic Caucus Chairman Chris Turner about where this debate is going.
It's hard to believe it's been a year, and it's just an unimaginable tragedy that I think is still so fresh in the hearts and minds of so many Texans, none more so than the families who lost their precious children. I don't think anything was accomplished on gun safety. The very modest proposal to raise the age from 18 to 21 to buy a high-powered semi-automatic weapon, that's common sense legislation, which if one thing was accomplished is that it did garner some bipartisan support in the House committee. That is important to acknowledge and appreciate those members who cast that courageous vote. Members of the legislature, House Democrats and Senate Democrats, have consistently advocating for raise the age, closing the background check loophole, enacting some sort of common sense red flag law, and other proposals. But those have fallen on deaf ears by and large by the leadership.
A background bill did pass involving juveniles and their past criminal record. Isn't that a victory?
That's an important measure, and I'm glad that it passed, absolutely. But we need to do so much more. We ought to close background check loopholes for all buyers. We ought to ensure that we raise the age to 21 for buying these high-powered, high-velocity weapons. We ought to require that a stolen gun be reported to law enforcement.
Knowing what we know now about what will pass, what will not pass, how do you come back with something different, a different strategy?
Well, I think we need to continue to work for that and the other common sense reforms that I've mentioned. I think what has to change is the decision makers have to change, or the people making the decisions have to change their minds. And both of those things, only the voters, I think, can make that happen. The voters have to send a clear message to their elected representatives of both parties that they want to see action on this. That's not the status quo is not acceptable. That parents and their children have to live in fear of mass shootings, whether it be at a school or a shopping mall.
The bills that did pass requiring more school security, more mental health programs, aren't they enough?
They're good. I'm glad that we're doing those things. It's not enough, though. We need to do all of it. Uvalde taught us that there were failures in the mental health care delivery system. There were failures in school security. And there was failure with respect to common sense gun safety measures in place. I think the measures on school security will help on balance. I think more investments in mental health always are helpful. So there's a lot of things we can do in all of those areas, but we can't neglect common sense gun safety measures.
The 24 presidential campaign is coming up. Do you fear that it's just going to be too volatile for this discussion, this debate to move forward?
No, I think the debate will continue to move forward. I think you see...
Really? I mean, 24 is going to be ugly.
Yeah, no, it is, but I think it's going to be I think it'll be a central issue in the presidential campaign. I think it'll be a central issue in national races for the U.S. Senate and Congress around the country, and including in races here in Texas for the legislature. I think more and more Americans want to see a return to some sanity with respect to our gun laws, and I do think that will be a focal point in 2024.
But there certainly was a lot of regret and hope in what Representative Turner said just then. My word for that interview is, and sorry guys, it's another combo for me, circular reasoning. Stephen, what's your word?
I'm just stuck on you saying circular reasoning. I guess my word will be concrete.
Greg, what's your word?
I'll follow the rules, Rudy. My word is deadlock.
All right, there's a lot to discuss about where the gun debate goes from here. But what is certain, the Fox Texas Trio will be back to weigh in right after this. The Fox Texas Trio is back to talk about our interview with State Representative Chris Turner, the former House Democratic Caucus Chair, on where the gun safety reform debate goes a year after Uvalde. And now that the regular session has ended. My word for this interview, circular reasoning. It's a fallacy of logic. And because it feels that way, because the two sides seem to be trapped in their own debate topics, turning around in their own debates, their own truths, and can't break out of that. Stephen, Representative Turner and other Democrats put a lot of effort and time into increasing the age to buy a high-powered rifle. Moving forward, are you hearing people around the Metroplex saying they want to continue that fight or go to other ideas? What do you think?
Democrats will continue to push this. That's not going to change because what just happened a couple of weeks ago? We had another mass shooting, happened to be in North Texas, in Allen. Now, this one, according to law enforcement, the gunmen legally purchased their weapons. But I think what Representative Turner and some others have been saying, even on the Republican side, is why can't they find something that both sides agree on and pass it? Republican Mayor of Fort Worth, Mattie Parker, and other Republicans, the Republican Mayor of Uvalde, said that they support raising the age. And it just appears that you mentioned circular motion, revolving door, whatever word we want to use. We just keep going in circles and neither side is coming together on anything that is substantial.
Greg, Republicans say they have responded in a recent op-ed written by Texas Senator John Cornyn, who you spoke to recently. He claimed the new federal law Congress passed after Uvalde has prevented more than 160 firearm purchases, which included an 18-year-old who was a minor that made threats as a minor. Now, during the session, Texas state lawmakers, they passed a bill that requires local clerks to get juvenile crime records into that national background check system as part of that federal law. I'm hearing more people say, let's do more. Restrict how many bullets can be in a clip. More training. What ideas are you hearing?
Look, Rudy, if we live by state referendum, red flag laws, stiffer mandatory background checks, and a boost in the age limit for AR and AK purchase would be on the books. That said, our representative democracy is not so representative on this incredibly divisive issue. And despite the horror of multiple mass shootings, most Republicans in the legislature see these modest measures as allowing the camel's nose under the tent, meaning if they give gun control advocates anything, they will keep coming back for more and more. Now, to be fair, Democrats draw the same hard line on school choice and public school funding, contending if you give conservatives an inch, they'll take a mile. Two very different issues, but I think you catch my drift.
Right. Well, House Republicans like Frederick Frazier from McKinney, Justin Holland of Rockwall, Sam Harless of Spring, they came out in support of at least pushing the age increase debate forward. Frazier, he even tried and failed to get a bill passed that bans devices that modify standard guns into rapid fire machine guns. Guys, they were trying to do something, trying to find common ground. Do you think there's going to be pushback against those three, cost them their seats, or can they move this forward like Turner believes it's going to move forward? Stephen?
I don't think those Republicans will get any pushback, and it's for the reasons that Greg mentioned. They are very conservative, some of them, on other issues when it comes to school vouchers, abortion, and other topics. So I don't think this one singular issue, even though it's a hot button issue of guns, will hurt those Republicans. Now, with that said, what's not understood is every time there's a mass shooting, we hear thoughts and prayers, we see the tweets, but nothing changes on either side. I know the federal government passed that law. The legislature will pass something similar, expected when it comes to the mental health or criminal records of juveniles. But what's said is nothing's going to change unless the elected officials are held accountable for no longer passing this. If that doesn't change, we're going to continue this circular motion.
Greg, you think so, that we're still stuck, or do you see signs that camel getting a little bit more under that tent you mentioned?
Well, talking about those incumbents, the best defense for them is to wrap themselves in law enforcement, because the peace officers associations are fully backing most of the modest reforms. Now, right now, even if a gunman strafed the state capitol with an AR, you couldn't find the votes for these restrictions. The genie is out of the bottle here. There are nearly 500 million firearms circulating in the United States, and if you really want to see some violence, just try taking them back. There's also no guarantee that any of these proposed restrictions would deter those who are bound and determined to kill.
And we're also going to have to see if this becomes a presidential debate issue. Now, to see this interview or any of our past interviews, go to our station's YouTube page.
And the conversation always continues on our social media pages.
And we'll have plenty more Texas news and politics next week. But in the meantime, be sure and tell us what you think the issue is.